as we talk about communication being the bloodline of a marriage, we all know that many times relationships, I'm thinking even as I get the slides to share, many relationships, generally speaking, have been destroyed because people stop talking. It is not so much so that they offended each other or somebody said something wrong. They just talking. And as a result, the communication, the relationship just, you know, got destroyed or disappeared. Not in the sense that you're like, what really happened to us? We're no longer as good friends as we used to be. And you discover it is not that you offended each other or you had a conflict, you just stopped talking. And many times, even in marriage institution, someone said that if there's any door that should be the last to close, it is the door of communication. And of course, I know some would, contradict that and ask, what communication is toxic? Then should it continue? But in this case, because we're talking about healthy communication, then that door should stay open. And so, as we talk about communication, I cannot talk about communication without mentioning the one and only great scholar that I know who has come up with one of the definitions that are used across different universities. And in its simplest form, talks about communication as creating understanding. Two words. That is Donald Smith, founder of Vista University, who happens to be by extension my employer, but right now is over 90 years. We always credit that the simplest definition of uh, communication to create understanding. So as a couple, if you cannot understand one another, then basically we are saying communication is not happening. And I came across an interesting quote. I love quotes by someone that says a marriage is an alliance entered into by a man who cannot sleep with the window shut and a woman who can't sleep with the window open. So even as we begin the discussion on communication, we need to realize that sometimes it can be easier said than done in the sense that we say, let's communicate. One person is looking south and the other one is looking north. What happens then? That is why we are here in order to ask ourselves what is the best approach to take on matters communication. So when, of course, like I've said before, when understanding is not attained, then we say there's a communication breakdown or there is misunderstanding. So many times it is not so much that one person is not good or the other person has a problem, but it is an issue of there is no understanding. So it is important to understand one another. And many times in normal conversation, you find people do not listen to each other. And that is why, as we move along, we will talk about talking at each other and not talking to one another. So let's remember communication is creating understanding. And I know some would go further to say it is the exchange of information using symbols or through a channel in order to create understanding. And of course, that again brings in other aspects of communication, like the message, the messenger, the channel, the receiver, and then the feedback. And in every communication process, we know there is something we call noise. And noise can be many things, and we will look at that before the last minute of my presentation. And so, as we talk about communication and we talk about what are some, before we talk about the health part, what is it that sometimes causes a lack of communication? Or rather, what are some of the unhealthy patterns between couples that cause problems? One, we are talking about frequent arguments. And I'm not talking about agreeing to disagree, but where people are really not talking, they're arguing all the time. And this can lead to unhealthy patterns, toxic patterns in a relationship. And in the long run, one person will say, especially for the lady, she will say, he doesn't understand me after all. This is how he always talks. And with that, she builds an attitude or she builds a stronghold within her so that basically there is no communication. What is there is that the man keeps talking, the lady is there looking like she's listening, but she's not really listening. And then the man will say, she's too emotional to reason with me. And we know there's a cliche, especially in Africa, where they say men are beasts. And I know this doesn't happen in the Christian marriages, while they say women are like children. But I want to say, I have a feeling sometimes in some of the Christian marriages, based on your background, you may not verbalize it, but many times in your mind, you could say, why is she being so childish? But you don't want to say it because sake of peace. But then the lady will also say, why is he being so mean to me? Or why is he acting like, kind of thing? And if you don't say it inside of you the moment you accept it, then already you're beginning to build a superficial wall, or a wall that may not be visible, but it will bring a problem in the future. And so we build with those kind of statements internally, we build superficial relationships because we cannot avoid one another. We're in the same house, in the same bedroom, we're in the same room, we are sharing more than just a blanket. And with time, we discover that we are just there either for the children, or because one is earning more than the other and the other one cannot live without the other one's money. And because of that, now we decide, fine, let's live together, but we are not really communicating. The other aspect that can be toxic in a marriage is not talking to one another. And we know this is so true, especially whereby people give each other the silent treatment. Um, Others call it attitude, and also loud non-verbal signals. So, in other words, you're communicating but are not talking. That is also very risky and it's very unhealthy in a marriage relationship. I will not delve too much because time I have, but I will try my best to, give it the best shot. And then we also have external stress that is brought home. We live in a world where there's so much going on around us. And sometimes if you're not careful, you may be answering your spouse, but it is not your spouse you're answering to. You're answering to a driver who annoyed you while you're coming home. So someone reminds you of something, and then you answer in such a way, and she's like, what did I say wrong? And then it can also be the issue of something you're dealing with. And so instead of dealing with that and leaving it outside, you bring it home, and then you answer your wife or your spouse in such a bad way. And he or she is left wondering, what did I do? So it's important to have a mental detox before meeting your spouse, your loved one, your lover, your better half, as much as possible. The reason I'm saying that, sometimes it's not good to leave the target outside, because you also need a shoulder to lean on. So when you come home, you want to talk, and part of that talking is also detoxing. And that is why I said, as much as possible, leave the baggage outside, come home, and just be a good wife, be a good husband, be the lover that your partner is looking for, and be the shoulder that your partner is looking for, but not become part of the problem as much as possible. The other thing that we say is a problem is talking at each other as opposed to talking to one another. Thank God we are living in days of internet and a lot of tutorials, and they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And you can look at the first couple and see they are talking at each other. So basically, no one is listening, no one is hearing. It's like they're trying to outdo each other, but you can see the second couple is talking to one another, even the smiles tell it all. And so in our relationship, let's strive to talk to one another and not talk at each other. Many times in a couple's life, there's more of a competition, trying to do the other. Like, no, 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 you listen to me. So the other one is like, okay, if you don't want to listen to me, then let me listen to you. But in reality, they are not listening. They cannot wait for you to finish so that they go about their business. So that is not really communication. That is talking at each other. So that is something we need to avoid and learn to talk to one another. The other problem, before we talk about now the healthy part, is when we drift apart emotionally and physically. According to research, physical intimacy in men, or sex in men, is a need, it's a physical need. It is something, and that is why they say, with all due respect to the men in the group, they say that for men, that's why a man, if they are not probably aligned to Christ, they're not Christ, they can go look for sex anywhere as long as they find it. But for a man, for a woman, for them, it is, what does this mean to me as a person, my psychology, my entire person? And so that is why a woman can survive without sex if the husband does not appreciate her. And by the way, now in the case that I'm talking to married couples, I will not dwell too much on especially those that are not outside. But for a married man, it is like punishment and especially when we are counseling married couples born again, and you find a woman is denying the husband sex because she knows he cannot go outside okay, I guess she assumes, because later you discover even some uh, Christian men go out of the marriage institution, they cheat on their spouses. So when you deny a man sex, especially for the lady, it's more torture for him than for the woman. The woman, for them, it is more of an emotional, psychological, all put together. For the man, it's more of, when I say more of, I'm not saying it's again not psychological for the man. So when a couple loses the physical intimacy and the emotional connection, then the relationship degenerates to a brother sister relationship. And they are in it for the convenience, like I said, of kids have to go to school. So we need to educate them, the public. We don't want to separate and look like we are no longer together. What will the rest of the world say? And so you find many people are in the marriage for the public opinion, not for themselves. So let us be deliberate about our physical intimacy in a world where people come home tired, in a world where every minute counts, in a world where targets have to be met. If you are not deliberate on your sex life, then you will have what we call a mechanical relationship. And someone said, one of the tribes in this country that I will not mention because I don't want to offend anyone, they said it's so mechanical that the women will be like, they're braiding their hair, and then the lady is telling the husband, when you're done, please cover me. Because there is no connection whatsoever. Yani ukimaliza nifunike. I believe that is not the portion of the couples that are watching tonight. It should really be something that we do together, and we do it with all our heart, with all our energy. Your heart, your mind, your soul, everything is in it. It is not a duty. It's your duty, Natoa, to allow me to say that. So, what are some of the healthy ways in which a couple can connect in a marriage? And I'm saying this knowing that some of you probably, as I say this, you can put yourself in the shoes of what I'm saying. Women, especially, when you're asked by your husband, "Are you okay? What's the problem?" You're like, "I'm okay." But in reality, you're saying, "No, I'm not okay." And you ask again whether I'm okay. So we are guilty of that as women. So I think over the years, been married for 4 years now. My first few years of marriage, I think I would be in the league of saying, yeah, I'm okay, but I'm okay with a non-verbal signals that says I'm not okay. But now I've learned to say, no, I'm not okay. I didn't like how you talk to me. And when I say I didn't like how you talk to me, it means maybe I should also work on myself to learn to accept the style of talking of my spouse. Because over the years, there are things that would offend me, and now we laugh about it. And then you're asked, is there a problem? You say no when you actually mean yes. So your spouse cannot read between the lines. From today, it doesn't hurt to tell your spouse, no, I'm not okay. No, I'm not happy. We need to sit down and talk. That is what I've learned for the 24 years. I mean, probably for the last 15 years. The first 10 years, a lot happens. Silent treatment, attitude up and apale. But with time, you discover this is not working. He doesn't even have a clue, you know, so that you're annoyed or you have an attitude. So later, you're like, do you know I was really offended? Then it's like, I had no idea that you are offended. And then you feel sorry for yourself for losing 2 hours of unhappiness unnecessarily. So let us be strict with one another, and let us be sincere, and let us be transparent. The one person that can understand you and understand you, and you will not be ashamed, is your spouse. Maybe the world might be forgiving. Then the other thing is, do not hold grudges. And I'm saying this on a serious note. It doesn't help to hold a grudge on anyone, and particularly your spouse.
Reverend Anne, just a
Yes,
minute. Sorry to
yes,
interject.
yes.
Your presentation is very nice, and
Am I breaking?
we don't want to miss anything out of it.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
kindly just adjust your you are breaking a bit, and let
Oh,
me give you like a minute to adjust, and
can
then
I go off camera?
yeah, it's okay. But meanwhile, as you adjust, let me call Pastor Joe to come on board, and then now
Yeah.
you can continue. Sorry for the interruption.
No worries. No worries at
Okay.
all.
Okay, thank you.
Did you hear the last point I made?
Yes, we from this point you can continue from here because we don't want to miss another thing from
Okay.
this. Yeah,
Okay.
please. Yeah. So
Let me go off
Pastor Joe.
camera.
Yeah, I think what Reverend is saying is we can try to go off camera to see if the bandwidth improves. Can we just have a try at that? Because sometimes the video consumes more bandwidth. Are you using earphone, Reverend?
No, I'm not. I'm actually just using my laptop.
You are very clear now. I think we can proceed, Chairman.
Now she's very better.
Just keep the video off. Thank you.
All right, fine. I'd actually requested, if possible, to be off camera from the beginning, but it's okay. Yeah, so anyway, the previous point was let's be straight and sincere and transparent with one another. I think there are times I would always say, what if I tell my hubby I'm not happy with him, or I'm not happy with so and so, or this issue is disturbing me? Atanichukulia aje. But I discovered that is the person who will help me the most in my life. And so please, let's be transparent, sincere, and straight. Of course, I know some of us have spouses that are not born again. Now that might be a bit different because you cannot always be very straight with someone that is not yet in the same mindset with you as far as the matters of faith are concerned. But on matters of family, you can ask God for wisdom, especially when you're dealing with a spouse who is not born again. Yeah, so let me move to the next slide. Yeah. So do not hold grudges. I think I already talked about that. And then accept the perspective of your partner. Now, do not assume that your perspective is the only one or the valid one. Always allow a win-win situation. And even when you do not agree, try to meet halfway through. There's a friend of ours who always says, because he doesn't love arguments, he was like, okay, you're right, you're right. But when you look at it, it's not that kind of you're right. But when you analyze, you realize he has just given up because he doesn't want us to continue arguing. So in a marriage institution, try to look for a middle ground and we have a win-win situation. The other thing is do not bring the past into conversation. One of the things that clouds conversations in marriage, it is when one spouse tells the other, just remember how you cheated on me. Just remember how you did this to me. You know, you bring unrelated grievances, complaints, and past sins to the table. I think that is what messes many conversations, and you dampen the spirit. Someone labda wanted to tell you, oh, by the way, I have this, I have that. And then they're like, you know what? Watch a tweet it. I'll not even say. So avoid bringing past into conversations. If you forget the person, move on to the future, move on to the next thing, and do not keep bringing the past into your conversations. Fight fair. And even not just in marriage, but in normal conversation, we have this thing of people saying, you always do this to me, you always talk like this, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. We need to remember, for better, for worse, we made that promise to one another to forgive each other and live with each other in all moments. And you know, in marriage, it is the place where someone will love you in spite of yourself. So avoid unfair verbal weapons on your partner, because many times, I mean, no one is an angel. At some point, somebody will do wrong. I remember before we got married, we would visit couples just to get an opinion of what marriage is all about. And it's amazing because many times we visited couples that love the Lord, couples that are serving Christ. And in some homes you go and someone tells the husband, "Sasa unaongeanga aje?" And we are before visitors. I mean, they are visitors, not us. We are visitors. So after that, we are like, wow, I don't think that's how we want to talk with each other in the future, you know. And in another place we went, and the wife was telling the husband, "Ai, sasa, why are you seated? Nani hajatoka hapa?" I'm just being real. And we are there. Well, so we are like, no, this is not fair. And now the woman telling the husband, "Nani hapa hajachoka? So you need to wake up and continue working. I'm also working." So let us resist putting down one another, name calling. And you see, the thing is, when people are blaming each other, usually there's no third party. And then the moment someone knocks the door, all of a sudden their smiles and they're like, oh, karibu sana, bwana sifiwe, it's nice to see you. And the moment that person walks away, now you're back again to, someone told me they're called default settings. You go back to your real self when no one else is watching you. Let's be real to our partner in public and in private as much as possible. And then let us use positive statements and humor. I mean, positive statements help keep the door of effective communication in marriage open. One of the things I want to tell you for free, because Paul says we are books to be read, my husband is a humorous guy. And I think one of the reasons I've managed to stay younger, maybe than my real age, is because I laugh a lot when we are with him. I'm not saying we are the perfect couple, but I think I laugh with him more than I laugh with anyone else. Either at my place of work or in church, I laugh and laugh until sometimes my mama asks me, "Hey, mom, kwani ni nini dada amekwambia?" And of course, for me, that works. I laugh, and of course, kukosagi those 2 moments, but I'm just saying for me, I'm blessed, and laughter is medicine to the heart. So be this person that makes your spouse laugh, crack jokes with them, tell them something in their ear that of course, nobody else should tell them what you tell them, but you decide what works for you as a couple. Tell them something kwa masikio, which if somebody heard, they would look at you like, really? Did you say that? Let me say this, huh? The COVID era separated us. I wish it was a physical meeting, but sometimes my husband jokes with me, namwambia, hey, Bishop, si umetoka kwa madhabahu ama si jana ulikuwa church? And then we laugh about it because whatever he tells me, he cannot say it in public. People would be like, hey, man of God. And then sometimes I'll tell him, imagine split screen sai. For those of you that are in media, you understand. Or even for those of you that watch news, we have a split screen of Camp A and Camp B politically. So I'll tell him, hey, imagine the man of God preaching fire and brimstone, and then the man of God, what he's telling the wife now, hey, people will not even believe. They will not believe this is their bishop. But anyway, he tells the wife, so it's quite in order. So use humor on one another. And then be honest with your spouse. I just have a few minutes left. You cannot accuse your spouse like, you made me feel bad. Learn to say, I felt bad when you talk to me like that. In other words, take responsibility of the situation. Even if you ask alone, your spouse will talk badly to you, don't tell them you made me. Say, I felt bad. I didn't like it. I think we need to change how we treat one another. And then, of course, be honest but sensitive. By this, I mean don't flatter unless you mean it. It's okay to flatter your partner. It's okay to shower them with praises, but do not be too blunt with them. Like don't tell your partner, I squeeze mbona umeadd weight hivo. You need to lose, or your makeup in a car. Those kind of statements that you make and then the person feels so belittled. You know, one of the things we always tell each other is one nice way to say you've added weight and you need to cut down is to say that outfit looks good on you, but it seems like you've outgrown it. That's a nice way of saying you've added weight. You need to eat some broccoli. Um, so I think that is what at that point we would bring this particular part to a close on how can we encourage healthy communication. Now let's look quickly at the little foxes that destroy communication in marriage. One of the things I've discovered, affairs, if you have never been caught in a situation where you thought of someone else more than your spouse, it is not magic, by the way. It all starts with you maybe flirting with someone of the opposite gender, mnakosana asubuhi with your spouse, and then you meet someone in the office and they tell you, oh, you look so good, or what's up? You don't look your usual self, and you begin to appreciate those small comments. All I want to say is there should be no secrecy between you and your spouse. As I say here, and I know it may sound more idealistic, we have each other's PIN number, me and my husband. He knows my PIN, Yasimu. I know his PIN. And even if he left the phone, he cannot slide running from the bathroom So I don't know, for those of you that are listening, how much of your partner's business is available to you. If you have your account, does he know how much? Because I know people say, no, you should not have an account. There are sometimes you can have your account, but it should not be a secret account. Secrecy, is there something your spouse cannot know? That's a potential pitfall. Is there someone else you trust more than your spouse? Then that's a red flag. The other thing is lack of a one-on-one time with one another. I just want to ask, when was the last time you took each other out for a dinner just to talk? And considering this is a communication, a connect session, there should be no other agenda, just to talk, not to discuss projects, just to talk and see how are we doing in our marriage. Is there something you'd like me to change, and things like that. And then, of course, poor listening skills are other foxes that destroy the vine. We need to learn to listen beyond the words. And again, I'll use myself as an example. Even if I smile and I'm not happy, or I'm quiet, but there's another quietness that goes beyond quiet. There are times my husband will ask me, what is the problem? Then I ask him, which problem? He tells me, no. There's a way like, thing is not right. I will share. If you cannot read beyond the words, you cannot listen beyond the words, then you need to develop your listening skills. I'm not just talking about listening to what they speak, but listening beyond what is being said. And then you need to understand the love language of your spouse. I mean, when you understand their language, then you can connect better with them. What is it they like? After 24 years, I can tell you I don't need to tell my husband what he needs to buy for me on my birthday, what he buys for me, and I'm really happy, or what he does to me, and I really like it. He also knows what to avoid, and the reverse is true. But if people say, like this one time, let me mention this, that there was a show that was going on TV, and then the couple is asked questions that they are not together. So the lady is asked, the husband is asked, who is your wife's mentor? And then the husband says, it's me. And then the wife is asked, who is your mentor? Then the wife mentions a totally different person, and it looked crazy. They didn't even know the favorite color of their spouses. They didn't know what kind of genre of books the spouse loves reading. So, what is the love language of the partner? And as we come to closer to the end, we need to look at the gadgets. I know these look like kids, but it's just symbolic of what gadgets have done to our marriages if we are not careful, what they are likely to do if we are not careful. Marital gadgets and marital relationships, are they a blessing or are they a curse? Of course, right now we are happy, we are using our gadgets and we are able to connect and talk about healthy communication, but we know that is not always the case in many marriages. So, according to a poll that was done in 2014, there was an indicator that marital relationships, partners have been complaining of their spouses being too distracted by the cell phone, particularly. And nearly 1 in 10 argue that their partner spends a lot of time on their device. That was a research that was done in 2014. And so you can imagine in 2022, after COVID, how is the situation? And also, it was noted that in the same poll, arguments between couples have to do many times with technology, like deciding when to use devices, when to abstain. Do we use phones when we are on the dining table, and things like that? And of course, excessive technology can create problems between married couples. And of course, they can start conflict. So, oh no, somebody's saying Bishop Ameditatia. Anyway, so potential conflict and dissatisfaction in the relationship. So let us be careful with mobile phones, gadgets, and especially when it is our time together as a couple. And as I conclude, because honestly speaking, 40 minutes may not be enough to say everything regarding healthy communication, but I will try to finish in the next 4 minutes. A recent study that was done in Pittsburgh School of Medicine showed that when we use a lot of social media and when we use gadgets a lot, there could be an depression because we are detached from the real world. And so I'm asking us, is this too far-fetched from us? Not really, because when the West sneezes, like they say, Africa gets the cough. So we might assume mental health issues have to do with the younger generation and things like that. Let's also know that in Africa today, and particularly in Kenya, mental health has become a real issue in the society. What are some of the facts we need to look at? Let's accept that technology is here to stay, but it should not control us. It should not come between you and your spouse. Let's agree on limits. Make your rule as a couple regarding gadgets. For example, when you go out for dinner, must you have the phone on? Can't you put it on flight mode for at least 2 hours? And then, of course, our gadgets should be accessible to one another. It should not be a best kept secret, 3 different pins until your spouse is like, oh my God. And then finally, feel human touch, talk with technology. Let's leave room for the good old conversations and laughter, minus the emojis. Of course, we need the emotional connection that comes from body language, tone of voice, facial expressions, being essential to the relationship. That is impossible to replicate with technology. So let us. No, I'm not doing away with emojis. I'm just saying let us not, you know, kill the human touch, the warmth that comes with talk, conversation, laughter, as opposed to the emojis that are very inanimate. In conclusion, even the worst person has a best friend and someone who would be willing to die for them. So if you've been having problem or challenges with your spouse, matters of communication, this is something you can work out. And of course, I cannot fail to quote my one and only Bishop, who always says, every problem is a wisdom problem. So if you're finding it hard to communicate, you're giving each other silent treatment, it's just a wisdom problem. Go back to the drawing board and ask yourself, what wisdom am I lacking? And when you get the wisdom to handle your spouse, what seems like a problem becomes easy to handle. And then I will put a scripture here that says, let your speech always be gracious and seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you should answer each person. Let your speech always be with grace. And so I believe this also applies to couples. You cannot be polite to a stranger. And I always say, sometimes we are more polite to strangers than we are polite and very courteous to our own people. And that is why you hear parents talking to their kids, some parents, so badly. And then they'll talk to the neighbors' kids, hi, how are you, mommy? How are you? You know, they meet neighbors' husband. They're like, hi, man, how are you doing? So the same courtesy should, in fact, double, should be extended to our spouses. And then, of course, I came across this interesting quote for husbands that says, husbands, when your wife is asking you questions, it's not to interrogate you, it's to connect with you. And amazingly, I came across the word connect and I thought, wow, what a timely quote. So when we are asking you questions, we are not interrogating you, we are trying to connect with you. For the wives, a married woman, the safest place for you is to be at home with your husband. Of course, I'm not talking about the kitchen kind of a narrative where the woman stays is in the kitchen. No. But I'm saying being at a point where you understand that the safest place to be is with your husband. And of course, with that meaning you communicate well, you love each other's company, you love one another. As we conclude, if there's any piece of advice to carry with you throughout your entire marriage, it would be to communicate as much as possible, send text messages, emails, call each other on the phone as much as possible. And of course, physically, remember to talk, to laugh, to hug, to kiss one another, to do all that a couple has to do, because on the day you say, I do, you are given all that pertains to marriage. And so, with that, I want to say that is the presentation I had prepared. And I say, may God bless you. I do hope that you have been blessed. May the Lord bless you.